Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining what is a Land App First, which is an interactive Q&A session where we are hopefully going to answer all the questions that you have posed to the team. For those that haven't met me, I'm Dan. I'm the Partnerships and Innovation Lead here at Land App. Got a bit of experience using both the tool, both in terms of the technicalities, but also the practical application of it. And I'm hoping I'll be able to field most of your questions today, but obviously if there's any I can't answer, we will follow up accordingly. A bit of housekeeping before we start. Your camera and microphone will remain off for the duration of the call. However, this is a Q&A session, so we do want to hear from you, and you can ask any questions you like, Land App related or land management related, using the Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please don't use the chat function because the Q&A function allows us to upvote certain questions. So if you see one you like, please vote it up. The session is being recorded, so the recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, but as it's a bank holiday coming up, please give us a bit of time before that is live. As usual, we've got a couple of survey questions at the end. So we ask, I think it's 4 or 5 questions at the end that both inform our tool generally, so the Land App, but also they inform these webinar series. And this webinar is a perfect example of us listening to what you wanted and following accordingly. So thank you for all that suggested to run a Q&A session, sorry. So the agenda is fairly brief today. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes just updating you on Land App, so what we've been up to recently, and then we're going to jump straight into the Q&A. So I've got about 10 questions already that have come via email, but if there's more, please do pop them in the chat and vote them up if you particularly want them answered. So recent updates that have gone live in the Land App. We've been focusing a lot, really preparing for natural capital markets. So in particular, the biodiversity metric 4.0 came live by Natural England in March. We have now officially launched it, and you'll be receiving a product update, hopefully next week or very soon, outlining the details of that. But it ultimately means that you can now calculate your biodiversity units using metric 4.0. Included in that update, you will, some of you eagle-eyed viewers will notice that both the UK Habitat Baseline and the Land Management Plan templates have now got additional codes that match the metric 4.0. That includes being able to assign a polygon, things like traditional orchards, flood grazing marsh, etc. But again, that should come through on the product update. We've also released version 2, or an updated version of the peatland condition and carbon template, which means anyone who's assessing peatland for either Natural England's condition assessments or getting ready for the peatland carbon code, they can use that template. And I think we will do a future webinar on how to use that template properly. We've updated the LiDAR source, so the LiDAR data has got an increased coverage, and coincidentally, I think someone earlier asked what the current coverage is, and I'll show you that during the demo. And then finally, our official UK Habitat Best Guess Baseline is now live. You can access it within the software, so you don't actually need to contact sales. You just need to purchase a Ordnance Survey license first, and then you're able to purchase a Best Guess Baseline. If you need a quote beforehand, do get in touch with sales at the Land App, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. I've just extracted a bit of a screen grab from Tim, our family farm, our friend's family farm, just to show you what that best guess baseline is looking like now. And in particular, we've added the vegetation model from the Environment Agency. So now the outlines of trees and hedgerows are now part of that best guess, as well as, identifying some other features on the ground with things like Ordnance Survey and priority habitats. As ever, please do visit our YouTube channel. We've got lots of webinars on there. There's just more and more being uploaded, lots of good content. So do visit youtube.com/landapp, and you should be able to find everything in there, including from the latest webinar series we did back in March. And just finally, just some high-level numbers. The marketing team have just made these, and you should start seeing them on our social media soon, but I thought it'd make a nice slide, is that we've now surpassed 17,000 registered users, which is amazing. I'm really grateful for all of you for being part of it. We've had over 25,000 countryside stewardship plans created since 2020. We've now got over 8 million hectares of unique land. So that means at least 8 million hectares of land in England, Scotland, and Wales have downloaded boundaries or their SBI number onto the platform. And that's the equivalent of about 65% of English farmland. So really excited to have you all on board, and we're really looking forward to the next phases, which is ultimately trying to bring a sustainable planet for everyone and make the UK a case study. Obviously, thanks to all the partners, we're constantly adding logos to this matrix of great names. So if you're out there and you want your logo to be on our website, or you'll be interested in doing a case study with us, please do reach out to us. There's a support form where you can go through the in-app chat, because we'd be delighted to start, shouting about the good things that you're doing with the help of LandApp. Oh, thank you for coming. It's my final slide. Okay, we're going to move on to the Q&A demo. So I'm just going to start with a couple of questions that we've got beforehand, and I can see the Q&A is now picking up through the chat. The first question I'd like to answer is from Nigel. So Nigel has reached out and asked, he'd like to create a map of all the unregistered land in a parish. That's all the land inside a parish boundary that doesn't appear on the land registry map. So the land registry, if I turn on, for example, land registry freehold and turn off my map for the moment, you can see that there's some white space within the land registry. There's a number of ways that you can get to your endpoint. There's one way that's available in the software now, which is identifying and getting a shape for the polygon that makes up this area. And there's also a slightly quicker way, but it's not been released live yet. So just to firstly show you how I would go about, and he says for a particular parish, so let's get a parish boundary, just so for a parish boundary, if I turn off the land registry for now and get a parish boundary, let's go for this one because I think that golf course is in Farncombe. Let's create a new plan, a parish boundary. So let's turn the parish boundary on and give it a nice style, bit of color, a bit of a thicker border. Okay. So what Nigel was wanting is, how do I get the polygons that make up my parish that aren't currently registered? And I'm going to start with a smaller one, just because this is a bit of a fiddly process to start with. So if I was focusing, say, on the area just below the word Godalming down here, say Moss School Lane, what I can do is I can use other data sources to kind of fill in the blank. And for an example for that is I would use, say, Ordnance Survey Master Map. So those on our professional subscription who are eligible for the Master Map features can turn on OS Master Map, which is under here, color, and you can then load up all the polygons that make up the raster data. What I mean by that is, if I turn it off quickly, you can see that I'm then populating that block with the features that make up that area. I would then hold Shift on my keyboard and select the polygons or multiple polygons. I'm clicking on parish. Select the multiple polygons that make up that gap, like so. And zoom in. I'm holding Shift on my keyboard, by the way. So I'm selecting those polygons, right-clicking and hitting Copy to Plan. And then I would create a new plan called Unregistered Land. So that's just a manual way of, then if I turn off my master map and I turn off the freehold, what I've now got is I've now got a area of red that was unregistered, I think, according to the land registry. And those are all parcels that are authoritative because they're Ordnance Survey Master Map polygons. So let me just double check that is it's right. So if I turn off mine, do my red ones, fill in the blanks, nearly. I've missed a couple, but hopefully you see the point then. So you can trace or extract data from the master map vector if you're using OS Data Hub. For those that aren't on the OS Data Hub, and I know there's going to be a menu on there, the next level down from doing what I've just done is you can actually trace the Ordnance Survey master map. And so that premise does require credits. So if you're on the free server and you've got OS credits, be careful about spending them too quickly. And I would say the easiest way to avoid spending them too quickly is to firstly just start on something like OpenStreetMap like this, zoom into the area of interest, which is my area where the freehold data was missing. and then toggle on your OS base map. Your credits won't be used if you don't drag around the map. But now I've zoomed in, I can do something called turning on the interactive map. So at the bottom, I've got this interactive map button. I can hit the on button. And what that now has done is that now turns my my base map into interactive so I can trace it. The next thing I do is just create a new project. So I'm going to hit new and draw freehand. And I'm going to call this one unregistered number 2. This is just a slightly different way of doing it. Now I've got currently an empty project. There's no data in this at the moment. I'm now going to hit draw and I'm going to choose the area option and I'm going to trace the area of unregistered land. So now you can see that my cursor is trying to pick up. Ooh, there we are. It's tracing the master map for me. So I haven't got to buy the OS data hub access. I haven't got to access that. But what I have got is because I purchased credits, I have the ability to then trace the interactive base map. I can't remember exactly if this is right or wrong, but just to demo the process. So I'm now creating, again, I'm creating a blank or a red box that hopefully will represent the unregistered land. Turn that on. I mean, I've missed a couple of bits. So you can see it's a bit fiddly, but it is possible for you to create shapes. The other ways you can create shapes, and I would say the recommended way of creating shapes is if you contact us, we have all the data, and as a bespoke service, we can just clip it for you. So I think although you can manually fill in the blanks, and there might be some other ways round of doing it, and those have used that land up a lot. But I would say that tracing or using the vector data from Ordnance Survey Master Map is the quickest way of getting an unregistered land. I think at a whole parish level, Nigel, drop a message to us at support and we could just provide you with a quick quote for doing that. And it's something that we could probably introduce as a data purchase in the app. The next question is from Elise. Elise has said, I just wanted to ask if there's a way to search for a certain field on a mapper tool. If you say I've downloaded all the fields from a client's map using their SBI number, which I have done here, we just zoom to my map. Is there a way of searching for field 1, 2, 3, 4, for example? Yes, there is, not a formal one, but the way I like to do it is if I've got my map open like this and I've got my list of field numbers open, if on your keyboard you push Control F or Command F and then search for the number you want, like 1556, you can see now that I've searched for that number. So if I've got a very long list, I'm working with a larger estate, Control F or Command F if you're on a Mac, you can then search for the name or the number, and it then highlights in orange where that feature is. Question from Rosie at outlining unregistered land. I don't quite see the point. It doesn't give the information about who owns the lands. It's just changed the color. So a process outlining unregistered land, is given the information about who owns the land. Yes, so the problem is, Rosie, if it's not on the register, you can't click on the shape and therefore we don't have ownership details. So I think the question was just working out how do you draw the shapes for all the land that isn't registered. So perhaps you as a parish planner can go and encourage those landowners to go register their land. And I think that was the desired output of that point. Question from Harry, does the land app have any plans to include the data layers on DEFRA magic maps which are relevant to countryside stewardship? For example, upland breeding bird designation, water quality priority area, or severely disadvantaged areas, etc. So yes, Harry, we endeavor to get them all in that we can. I know the reason we haven't currently got things in like the target species layer is that we hit a licensing blocker with, I think it's the Environment Agency that owns the license to that. However, recently, as we're just about to do a partnership with Forestry Commission, which relied on some EA data to be licensed, that might have changed. And perhaps Rosie and I can take it away as an action to just look at those data layers that you've mentioned there. So yeah, I know, for example, that this water quality priority areas is something that we'd love to have in, but I do remember about a year ago when we had this conversation, we weren't licensed to host it. You could only get it through Magic. But if that's changed, obviously we'd love to host it. Question from Brian, is there a way to superimpose a grid square over a LandApp map, or alternatively ways in which to overlay such a map over a preformed grid? So Brian, yes, I think we could do part of your question. And so just to make everyone aware, within data layers, if you type in the word grid, there's the OS grid referenced box. And what that is that's a zoomable layer. And I'll turn off this, but you see it's a zoomable layer of grids that the Ordnance Survey used to map out the country. So that is, depending on what level you've zoomed out on, there are the different grids you get. If you zoom into your farm, or zoom into my farm, those grids change resolution. I think the maximum, or the minimum size, sorry, is 100 hectares. So it's a square kilometer. That's the smallest we go in. So if you want to create a grid with square kilometers, for example, you can actually copy these squares over onto a project by holding shift, clicking on, say, the 4 that you want, like I've done. I've selected these 4, right clicking, and then hitting copy to plan. You can then create a new plan and call it grids, and then bring that over. And what that's now done is that's now brought over those 4 grids that I can, style however I so wish and turn off the data layers. Okay, so they are now features that are on my. So if you want 1 kilometer grids, that's probably the easiest way to do it, especially if you're doing things like transects. Good way to do it. Other ways you can do it, and just gonna bring in that and maybe delete this square just to demo, is that you can also draw a grid, draw a box, sorry, and then start to create a grid. And the way you do that is you want to firstly hit draw and choose rectangle. And then when you're drawing a rectangle, if you've already got a grid line like this, you can trace the edge of it and therefore get a straight north-south line from Ordnance Survey. And then you can basically create, I don't know, a box of whatever size you want. And the way that I would do it is I'd first just like as close to the pin as you can, double click and finish drawing like I've done. And on the right-hand panel, you can then define the width and the height of those grids. So if I wanted to then do a 150 meter by 150 meter grid, I could hit that. And what I've now got is I've got 1 square that I know is 150 meter by 150 meters. So whatever that is in meters squared. Okay. Once you've got the shape that you want, you can then duplicate that shape and start forming your own grid. So there's a duplicate button at the top of your screen. If you hit that once, what's now happened is the LandApp has created a replica of your initial box that you can then move and join on to the next. If that makes sense. That level? Oh no, that's snapped the wrong thing. Oh, why is that not snapping? Interesting. So that should snap to my line. Nearly. Anyway, so hopefully you can get the point where you then, now instead of duplicating 1, you can duplicate 2. And now I've got 2 boxes that I can move. And you can see how then if you can get those level, you can list, it's not quite as neat as I wanted. You can then get 3 or 4 or 5. So now duplicating the 4 of them. So hopefully you can see then quite quickly, relatively quickly, you can build up a bit of a grid network in a bespoke way. And you can be as tidy or as untidy as you want. I might look into that, and Rosie maybe make a note. I think those shapes should be snapping to each other. And again, then once you've got those grids, you can add labels to them. Okay, hopefully that's useful. If you're looking for fillers for the Q&A, sometimes just zooming in and out a bit alters the price. So do you have any handy tips on how to reduce print costs? I think that's a very good question. Yes, so printing, the cost is generated, and just to show you, here's my nice plan. If I hit print map and hit new frame, the printing is calculated not on how wide the frame is, it's actually calculated on how much data is contained within the frame. And the more zoomed in you are, so if I were to zoom in over Lower Ishing here, like that, because Ordnance Survey is actually, when I print it, it's going to show the exact shape of those buildings, you're paying for more data. So actually, the more zoomed in you are, he says, was there a sweet spot? The more zoomed in you are, the more data you've got. So I basically, here I've hit master map. You can see it's telling me I'm printing on master map layers. And then the more zoomed in I am, the less, after I've hit that master map layer, the less master map shapes are going to be within my bounding box. But if I go out and past that master map layer, which is going to be in a moment, it will move from being master map to now being OS vector map. which is a different data product, and therefore it's cheaper. So the price then just between here and here jumps, like you can see, it's gone from £95 to £17. So yeah, just be aware before you hit print, ask yourself, do you need to have the exact outlines of the buildings and those master map features, or are you happy with a slightly more granular, view of that field without seeing the buildings crisp like the edge of that? And that's how you change the price. So as soon as you go to past master map, it's the amount of data you've got within, so it then decreases as you go in. But as you pass into OS vector, it then gets cheaper. So yeah, just be aware of that. So I would say for Tim's farm, just coincidentally, it's pretty much bang on, big enough to fit into an A4 print just on OS master on vector. But as soon as I go in a little bit, it's then going to jump to £98. So there. So just be aware, look on the left. Obviously, if you don't need Ordnance Survey, there's other database maps that are cheaper. There's free ones like OpenStreetMap. There's other slightly cheaper ones like Bing Imagery. And I think the new LiDAR-based map is also free as well, which is quite exciting. And I'll come on to that in a moment, because I think that's actually the next question. So we had a question in, which is, what's the current coverage of your LiDAR-based map? I can't remember who that was from. But if I turn on my LiDAR-based map here and zoom out, you can start to see that this new update, I think, is now, thanks to the Environment Agency, is given us pretty much 100% of England. I think it's 97% of England. As you can see, Wales and Scotland haven't commissioned, I don't think, a LiDAR survey, and therefore they haven't got access to it. But we've now got, I think it's 98 or 97% of England has now got a LiDAR, both zoomed out. And if you zoom all the way in as well, that should load better resolution for you. He says. There we go. Testing the theories. So we got a question in from just anonymous about how LiDAR can be useful. So I'm not a hydrologist or an expert. I used to give farm advice, but the way that LandApp sees LiDAR being useful is a number of things. Firstly, it gives you a kind of a X-ray vision of the land, so it eliminates the grass coverage, and it allows you to see how the topography of the land is. So I'm obviously looking at a random part of the country that I don't know well, but just looking here I can see that there's some form of dip, some form of shading like a valley, and that would in my mind indicate potentially water flow. So if it rained, water flow could be going down there. There's also a pretty much perfect circle of something here, which probably, I put on the historic, is going to be a registered something. I mean, I'm in a random place, so this is me having a guess. But there's some form of, feature there, man-made feature that is being picked up by the LiDAR that you may not see, although that's woodland cover. So you may not even see it on the ground. It's just given us an idea that potentially under that woodland, don't know who owns that woodland, but potentially under that woodland, there's some form of structure that's circular, which is, again, archaeologically wise, LiDAR is quite exciting. And the other thing you can detect quite nicely are things like ridge and furrow. So if you're trying to, restore historic landscapes, or you're trying to manage water, you can really quite nicely see how the land is, lying at a topography level and, terrain level, rather than being clouded by the vegetation that covers it. So I'd say, if you're doing countryside stewardship, look at LiDAR, put some nice options in the way to trap that water as it's flowing, or, protect existing features that you may not be able to see on the ground, but, might be present on that LiDAR survey. Hopefully that's useful. And yeah, if you Google why to use LiDAR, there's probably lots of fun things on there as well. For a question from Rich, I've been using the app, but can't find a way to select polygons when they are layered on top of each other, i.e. I can only see the top polygon. How do I jump between layered polygons? Yeah, Rich, thank you. Good question. I'm going to change off LiDAR and go to grayscale. Okay, so there's a couple of things at play here. The first thing to understand is that the way that the LandApp data sits is that the lower down the list on the left-hand side, the higher up the polygon is on the map. Slightly counterintuitive. It just means more down the list you are, the higher priority it's got. And what I mean by that is if I turn on grids, for example, grids are lower down the list on the left-hand side. That means when I try and click on the polygon, the grids are on top, and I'm therefore selecting the grids. I can't select the polygon behind. And hopefully this works, if I move grids to the top of the list, I should then be able to now click on the polygon because I've now brought forward the polygons are now above the list. Okay, so first thing to say is the order on the left-hand side here does impact what you're clicking on the map. And that's between plans. If you're thinking about a particular plan, and let's just for argument's sake, draw a little polygon like this on my map. And I don't know, I've called this scrub. Okay. At the moment, that scrub patch is sat on top of the grass field, which means I can click on the scrub patch. If I then click on this polygon, temporarily the land app then makes it look like the scrub is hidden. So I've now clicked on this polygon, but if I click off, scrub is back on the top. You might have instances where it's the wrong way round. And the way that you adapt that is you want to move or bring forward the smaller shape. And you can do that on the left-hand side by firstly selecting the polygon. So if I would go into the field parcels on the left-hand side and say the permanent grassland is on top. I want to bring the scrub forward. So I firstly select the scrub. I then go to the three dots here under the More button, and I'm met with these two little icons. One of them says bring forward, or one of them says forwards, and one of them says backwards. So just to show you, if I push that backwards, what happens is now is that the scrub is behind the grass field, so I can't click on it. I mean, I could move out of the way. But what I want to do is instead click on the grass, hit the three dots and send the grass backwards, which should now has brought the scrub forwards. Okay, so backwards, forwards can be done in here between items within a single plan. And then the plan layers, you want to make sure the plan is lower down the list for you to be able to access that feature. As a note, we've noticed there's quite a few land registry parcels that are overlapping, and therefore you can't access some of them. It's something that me and my team are working on a solution for, and I think we've got one, so bear with us on that, and we'll let people know when that's live. Is it possible to, a question from Jim Greenwood, is it possible to frame a map, then to send it to a collaborator for printing? So that's a very good question. So I think, Jim, within your team, and this is testing me now, within your team, when you create a frame, you can share that frame with only people that are within your organization. So if you're a subscriber and someone else is in the same team as you subscribing, you can do what you've just said. And the way that would work is that you create a print. I mean, I'm just going to create a very rubbish basic print and say I'm happy with that, and I've chosen to buy it. So then my organization's being debited anyway. Anyone in my organization can go to the top right-hand side of their maps and hit the little person icon and go to prints. And I think they should be able to see all of the plans that you've printed. So for example, you can see these are the plans that I've printed myself, or the plans that people I'm collaborating with on a map are printed. So Jim, what you could do is you could basically confirm the print frame, and you have to buy it. Once it's bought, any collaborators can then come in and download and reprint that map or edit that print as well. So I can go into this lovely map that we're doing with the Foundation for Common Land as part of their Elm trial, and I can edit and reprint it as well. Providing that the frame stays the same, I'm not charged to reprint it, even if I change the title and the legend. So yes, you can collaborate on prints. Someone has to at least purchase the print before it happens, but once it's purchased, other people can come and reuse that frame and change the styling and the labels, etc., through the print functionality that you find at the top right. Hopefully that's answered your question, Jim, and if not, we can maybe come back to it towards the end. But there's some good guidance on our help page for printing, and hopefully that will have your answers. Jim Hardy, the RPA data you are using is 2 to 3 years out of date. There doesn't seem to be any way of correcting it. So Jim, I assume you are talking about my SBI number download, which is this map. And you're saying that this is 2 to 3 years out of date. I would push back and say that we've recently submitted an RLE1 form for this farm, and has it updated? That's a very good point. We did submit that the woodland gets updated. So basically the high level is the RPA is in control of this data. When you submit an RLE1 form, it should update on this data feed, and regularly we see people splitting fields and adding new features, and it should be pulling through. Although if that's not the case, we need to bring it up with the RPA. We've obviously got an issue with the movement away from basic payment, which is asking landowners to declare land use types. is looking like we're going to lose that, and we do need something to replace it. But at the moment, we are reliant on the land cover data that we get from the Rural Payment Agency. I know a lot of organizations, including people like the Ordnance Survey, are looking at how they can continue that type of data. You know, we've got satellite data, for example, but for the moment, yeah, this is as good as we've got. So I would say with the RPA, push with an RLE1 form and push back to, if they don't update the geospatial element of it, just make sure you push back and say that this needs to be updated, and that woodland or that change be in there. But yeah, I've not actually heard of a 2 to 3 year delay. I've heard of, you know, a couple of weeks delay, but I've not heard of a 2 to 3 year delay. But the other high level point on that, Jim, actually, while we're here, is we are pushing and having some very positive conversations about digital submissions of data. So for example, a digital submission of an RLE1 form, you fill out it on Land App, make sure the parcel ID is numbered correctly. And we really want you to be able to push that geospatial data to the RPA for them to accept or reject. And then they don't need to do the mapping themselves. They've used you to do the mapping. Okay, question from Stuart. Can you select multiple parcels via a drag and select, i.e. not clicking each parcel individually? Yes, Stuart. So unfortunately, not completely as you say. And what Stuart says is if I say hold shift and then click like this, it looks like it's going to select the polygons, but it's actually a zoom in function. It's something that we've been asked before, and I think it's on the list. And I know a couple of other apps have got that, so it might be worth us definitely exploring that. What I would say is, though, you can multi-select a couple of different ways. First one is if you're just wanting to select features of a particular feature type. So say I want to select on my permanent grasslands, you can right-click and hit select feature type, and that highlights all of your permanent grass fields. So you can see those have all been selected. Or if you wanted to select all of your farm, you can also hit the 3 dots and select all and choose which type of shape you want. So for example, I just want to select all of my polygons or all of my areas, sorry. I can basically select all areas and hit done, and that highlights everything. Now, one final step on that is, say I just wanted to select the left-hand side of the farm, I'd go through that process, then I would hold shift on my keyboard and deselect the polygons I don't want to have selected. So now what I've done is I've selected all and I've gone down. So yeah, there's different ways of selecting, but appreciate that you know, having that ability to click and drag would be really smart. And again, we will take it away for the developers and see what they can do. Will imported RPA parcels automatically update in line with the RLE1 forms for boundaries updating, or will we have to import and update the new data? So Melissa, at the moment, no, the data does not update itself. It is it's a static data download you do from the Land App, from the RPA, sorry. But what we do, so say I've submitted an RLE1 form and I'm just going to re-download data. Just to show you, if you're on the subscription, and let's just say I've updated just this woodland block down here, what you can actually do is you can hit the new button and download data. And there's this RPA import for large holdings where you can actually just import a particular part of your farm. So I'm just going to do those ones just for demo. So only the ones that fall within my little red box. I just want to download the RPA data for those ones. And give it a name, demo, just want the land covers, for example. And what this does is this, instead of downloading your entire SBI number, it will just download that particular patch. So then you can just replace the particular polygons rather than starting from scratch. Okay, so that might be useful if you've got working with a larger estate, for example, or you're working with an SBI number that's got multiple holdings across a geography. That takes about 5 seconds. If I refresh my screen, you can see now what's happened is I've downloaded, there's this file called BPS land covers demo, which is just the particular area of interest. Okay, so I've just downloaded those parcels. And then what I would probably do just to finalize the demo is I would select those 3 and delete them. And then I would basically select all of these ones and then copy them to my SBI number. And what I've done now is I've now replace those old land covers with the new ones. Okay, and then I can archive this project, and all of the formatting and all of the numbers should remain the same. Okay. Melissa, another question from yourself. Can parcels from the Rural Payments Wales be imported? Still no news from Rural Payments Wales, unfortunately. So we would love to have an integration with the RPW, but we haven't currently got a good contact that's giving us the geospatial insight we need. So if anyone here has got good contacts with the Rural Payments Wales, do let us know and put us in touch, because we'd love to have a discussion. Robin Horton, when you print OS maps, it prompts for a scale, then the scale you enter determines the size of the page. Can you do it the other way around, specifically A4, and it scales at the selected fit? Okay, let me have a look. I don't think so, but let's say new frame, choosing A4 portrait, which is then an automatic size. I then hit fixed scale, 1 to 15,000, and then you do it the other way. So then that's now given that scale. So yeah, there's kind of, you can then drag the center point. So you either choose where you want, where you want the frame. So let's go 1 to 2,500, like so. And then you define where the center point is. Or if you hit print everything I can see, so I'm not sure if I fully understand your question, Robin. I think that gives you full flexibility. You can either, they're all going to be A4. A4 is just the size of the print. Oh, and then the scale changes as you extend that, is it? Yeah, the scale changes as you extend that. So it's 1 to 47,000, or you define it on a, I think you've got full flexibility, but if I've completely misunderstood that, please do add some definition into the question, into the Q&A function. Again, apologies for that, but I think you can either choose A4 print and then choose your ideas, choose your endpoints, or you can print at a fixed scale, and then, because the A4 portrait is just the size of the paper rather than the scale itself. Sorry if I've misunderstood. Question from Marcus. Hi, Marcus. Any tips dealing with a selection of overlaid features from different layers in the data layers menu? Any tips to deal with a selection over? Yeah, so if you're in the data layers menu on the right-hand side and you've overlaid them, at the moment, we don't give the user the ability to, let's just choose some, to choose which order they appear on the right-hand side. So again, it's a bit of functionality that we know we need, and it's something we need to get around to doing. But we basically, at the moment, I can't click. I can obviously work my way through, but it's because there's so many different layers. At the moment, it's just the case of toggling off the one you don't want. I don't know how the order of these is defined other than alphabetical or alphabetical by category, but perhaps we can report back and just work out a bit more flexibility in here. So I assume what you're asking, Marcus, is you want to be able to select or maybe change the order in which those data layers on the right hand side lie. Question from Robin: for soil monitoring sites within a field, how do you annotate the map and enter the data to show on the map? Yeah, thanks, Robin. So we've got at the moment, not a fixed way of doing it, but I can demonstrate a way of doing it. We are looking, by the way, just as a note, to add a soil sampling template as the mobile app version 2 is released, which is hopefully going to be October or November this coming year. So we've got a way of firstly drawing points. So hypothetically, let's say this is your field of interest. You can draw the survey points, or you can upload them from a survey app on your phone. Say these are my points. First thing you need to do is just make sure that all the points have got the same attributes. And you can do that by, well, first you need all the points selected. If you've deselected them and then you want to go select them again, remember, right click and hit select feature type, and that selects all your points. And on the right hand side, you can add new attribute. So new attribute could be a VES score, visual assessment score. And then you want that as text. And then you can either give them all the same value by hitting a number, or just hit save new attribute to start with. Okay, so now every point has got this VES point. You can then hit new attribute, and there could be one more, which So it could be MPK value, for example, and then you can add that value in there. Now, when I click on each of these points, I can add, say these two had the same VES score, selected them both, and I can give them a score. I can't remember exactly how the VES format is, but then giving it a VES score of 4, and then you can add those different points with different levels. Now, we do want to formalize that, so we're all collecting data the same way, the same types of data, but there's no reason why you can't at least start recording that data in the Land app. I would just reiterate what I did earlier, is just make sure that you select all the points before you create the new attribute. If you hit new attribute on just one of the points, it's only that point that's going to have the new attribute. Okay. So you can annotate like this. Other ways, just to show you that you can annotate, there's definitely a data layer on it, you know what I mean? The other way you can annotate is if you hit draw at the top left, one of the features that you can add is a text point. And so you can actually add a floating text point like so, and then label it something like soil samples. Oh, sorry, soil samples, and then draw those on, like draw an arrow to each of them. Ooh. It could be slightly neater, but hopefully you see the point. So I'm double clicking, by the way, to finish drawing the arrow. So you can either do a floating text point, or you can label the points directly with scores, values, etc. Like I've done with this 4. Let's just give this a round. So, okay, and then that just stacks up. Can you lock out the move button? Sometimes, yeah, good point, Martin. So yeah, can you lock out the move button? I sometimes click it by mistake. So Martin is talking about this move button at the top here. Yes, as soon as you have that on, just to show you, you can click on polygons and move them like this, which can be useful, but it also can be frustrating at times. Remember, if you do make the mistake, hit undo until the polygon is back where it wants to be. So you don't have to then redraw it. And just by default, always get into the habit of having this adjust feature button clicked instead of the move feature. You can lock all modifications. There is a padlock, and that now stops you doing anything. You can click on features, you can't drag them around. So if you are just browsing a map, feel free to hit the lock button. That locks all drawing tools for all of the plans, and you can do the exact same thing for individual plans as well. So if I go back to adjust feature, but I want to lock this particular plan, I can hit the padlock as well. And again, I can't then access any of the drawing tools. I can on another feature. It's my little feature. Grids. So yeah, I can draw on the grids one, but I've locked the SBI number and I therefore can't move anything. So yeah, use the padlock, Martin, if you are finding yourself accidentally moving projects. You can't just lock at the moment that particular button. I think that's what you're hinting at. Is it possible to use what 3 words to locate exact points on a map? It's a really good point. So we do have a what 3 words integration that works both ways. When I see both ways, if I want to find the what 3 words for this particular point, I can click on the point, go to coordinates, and there I've got the what 3 words, which mingles adjust toenail. Beautiful. Just a note, this is only available to subscribers. So if you're on the free product, you won't see this, but paid for users do. And then if I did take that address and then maybe move this point, actually let's not move the point to start with. If I keep that point there and then just search for that particular point, it zooms in, but it only zooms in like this. And this therefore means that technically that's the center point of the screen, of the mapping screen itself, but it's really quite hard to see without you drawing across on your screen where that exact point is. It's something that we've raised before with dev team, and it's definitely on the list, but it's not high up in priority unless it's absolutely urgent. Yeah, so just to show you that it's always going to be the same point of your screen, but it perhaps could do better by maybe dropping a where is it? What do we do? Oh yeah, for polygons, this may be a solution, is if we got a polygon here and we put a little cross like that, showing where that what 3 word is. That would be quite a nice little addition. It's like, here is the center of the what 3 words grid. At the moment, unfortunately, not more than I've just shown. Okay, question from Liam. Can we map habitats without SBI numbers and converting the land types? Yep, Liam, you can. So the way I would encourage people to do it, and perhaps a quick time to demo it, is that you can, firstly, you need to define a boundary. So let's just quickly hit new, use template, and I'm going to go for a blank project to start with, but I'm going to pick from land registry, and that's maybe, it's quite a big area, but it's probably too big for now. Let's just go for this one. So I'm just going to choose this little random patch, and the associated land parcel of this one can go away. So I pick those two. The way I would encourage you to do it is that we've obviously got this best guess baseline, which you can purchase through the download data button. So if I went download data and hit best guess baseline, what it asks me for is a valid OS license. So if you've already got the OS license, great. You can then choose your OS license from this list. If you haven't, you just need to quickly go back and hit download data and first buy an OS license for your area of interest. So you can see the value of it is fairly high depending on where you are in the country. But what that does allow you to is it gets you authoritative data that is ready for planning applications and fit for biodiversity offsetting as well. I'm just going to trigger while we wait the best guess baseline. So I purchased my OS master map. And now when I go to best guess baseline, my valid license is here. So you can see that the map Q&A sessions has a demo license that I've just purchased. And now I can purchase on top of that the best guess baseline. Worth saying that if anyone's got a, if anyone's a public sector geospatial holder, so any local councils on the call, or if you've already owned the OS license, your best guess baseline doesn't need another license purchased. So do get in touch and you can just get a quote for just the raw best guess baseline without having to worry about the quote. Okay. So I'm just going to purchase that and see if that completes by the end of the call, and I'll then show what that best guess looks like. If not, have a play, and there's some videos online as well. The other way that you can do it, which slightly more manual, who asked this question, Liam, is you can turn on something like satellite and start to manually break down your field parcel by features. Obviously, this isn't an authoritative way of doing it, so it depends on what your use case is. But I can say right click and split that. I can then see that there's a potential, let's see how good my steady hand is. I'm going to draw freehand. Ooh. Draw off that buffer and then assign that to woodland. I need, well, actually, one thing I do need to do is make sure it's in a habitat layer. So yeah, sorry. One step back is to draw your land registry boundary and purchase your best guess baseline, or to do it that slightly the free way is firstly then just turn that land registry parcel into a baseline habitat assessment by hitting duplicate, a baseline habitat assessment. Like so, and now when I go to assign those features, different blocks, I should be able to give them a UK habitat code. So you can see I've got my woodland, a cropland block, etc., etc. So I am building a bit of a habitat plan, but I'm not particularly, I'm not following any authoritative data other than the land registry boundary itself. Okay. Hopefully that's answered your question. And if you are interested, Liam, about how to draw margins or how to really get into the detail of drawing different shapes on a map, I'd recommend going back to watch the webinar on YouTube, particularly the introductory webinar, which we did back in March. Hopefully you can find that online, but I do a bit of a deep dive into the different functions. Question from Martin, any plan to add tree preservation orders or conservation areas to data sets? Yes, so TPOs, I'm in Bristol and we've recently had, you know, not an issue, a great win with thanks to the TPO data set. And so what I really want is, I would like to see the TPOs in here. We've not got them at the moment. We've got a very long list of data layers ready to go in, or at least we've got the location of them and the styling ready. We just need to find time for that to be put onto the development team's backlog. Where we are at the moment is we're just doing some back-end tasks to improve the functionality and prepare for some later updates. But the data layers at the moment are on ice, but I would like to try and get a whole sprint where we just put in, you know, 20 new data sets, and really we should reach out to everyone and understand what those data sets should be. You mentioned conservation areas. We've got special areas of conservation. The issue we have, Martin, just as a note, is anything that's not nationally held. Like if it's a local nature reserve, it's quite hard for us to access the data because it's all sat in local centers rather than it being a national data set. Okay, so yeah, I think if anyone's got maybe actually that's a good, if anyone's got any data layers that they really want to see in the land app, when you leave the webinar, you'll be met with the questionnaire. The last question just says any other comments. In that any other comments, alongside your other comments, please put in some data layers that you'd like to see, and that will allow us to at least aggregate them at scale. Another question from Robin. So if you purchase the OS license areas you demonstrated, each time you print, is it then free of charge? Yes, so this is something that, Robin, we're just figuring out license-wise. It technically, when you're buying the OS license, and actually if I refresh my screen, you're buying the OS vector data. The best guess is done. Here we are. So actually the best guess is loaded as well. So we can have a quick look at that. So you can see that instead of my baseline habitat assessment that I drew, which was a bit funky, this is now given the various different codes to the area. So it's saying this bit's winter stubble, this is temporary grass, and this is cropland as well. So it'd be interesting to see how they compare to what I would have said. So temporary grass is the one that I think we're just about to update because we had a massive drought last year. Oh no, it was bare in 2018 apparently. So temporary grass. I got distracted, Robin, from your question. So Robin's question was, once you bought the OS data like this, is it free to print? Now, what you've bought there is the vector data. So you've bought the actual files that make up the OS map. You haven't technically bought the raster data, which is this one, which is the image of the files. Okay, so there's slightly different data points. However, what we've done is when we serve the data, we have tried to serve it as styled as we think is neat, for you then to turn on what we've introduced as a blank layer. So, I mean, this is quite a small area, but you can see now if I wanted to print on this OSMM vector data, when I hit print, because I'm using blank base map, there's zero cost. So what we're saying is if you buy the vector data for a particular area and you print on a blank map, it's free. However, feedback has said that it's still not as crisp as that raster data. And so the raster, buying the rights to that frame, that print frame for unlimited prints is something we're looking to do with Ordnance Survey. And again, that's on the list of development, that's slightly higher up some of the other ones we've mentioned. So I am really keen to see you have the right to buy unlimited printing for a certain area. So, and Liam, what's the cost structure of the best guess baseline? Yeah, it's per hectare. So the best guess baseline is just a flat per hectare fee, and it scales as you get, as you buying more data. So if I don't know if I type in help, but where are we? My demo account is fine, bear with me. If you go on our help website and you type in best guess baseline, you should be able to find all the pricing, etc. On there. So if I go help center, Zoom, hopefully you're all familiar with the help center. If I type in best guess, how to create a UK best guess baseline, all the information's on here, including all the licensing, and I think there's a pricing page as well. Yeah, so here's the pricing for it at the moment. So depending on how much you buy dictates how much it is per hectare. So do have a little look, and please note, you need a valid OS license before you can purchase it. And it looks like the final question, unless there's any final ones coming through, we've got 5 more minutes. That's pretty good timing. Is it possible to move the labels and field numbers? Sometimes they overlap, currently hiding a label using a text point, but it would be nice to be able to move the label. Yeah, thanks, Anonymous. This is a really good point, and it's something that, again, we'd love to work on. At the moment, when you've got a map and you've got labels switched on, like so, you can't actually move the location of this label. It's currently just sat on top of the center point, which is reflecting that cross. Yeah, and what would be good is being able to click on that point and drag it like you can with one of these points, like so. Technically, it is feasible. I know I've heard the development team mention it before, and we'll just check in about where that is down the list. But as you can probably appreciate, there's quite a few appraising priorities for us as a business at the moment, trying to work out what is the priority. And therefore we're just, picking and choosing our battles, but definitely there's a whole realm of like user interface, UI, UX improvements that we really want to do over the coming months. So be patient with us on that one. Any feedback or ideas like we've got in here, always welcome. And the best way to do that is through the chat here. Just drop us a message. There's a little send us a message button. You could just say, hi, we'd love the labels to be moving. I know the customer support team are logging all those suggestions, and hopefully we can start to see some more of those improvements. But as you can hopefully see from this demo, a huge amount of development has gone in now. We're really just now trying to fine tune some of the core functions, particularly, as I said at the start, preparing for helping you all get a good plan ready for natural capital planning, or ready for the new ELM scheme, or whatever you're looking to access, while being authoritative. And that's the key point around that OS master map data. Is it might be expensive, but it has got the authority behind it, which means you could do a planning application of it. It's what's going to be underpinning a lot of the schemes as well. That being said, we're in conversations with government about making it accessible for free to landowners. We'd love people to have access to OS master map, but it's not our decision, unfortunately. So bear with us. I know Tim, who's our founder, is fighting the good fight, and we'll see what we can do, because ultimately we need everyone to have access to good data if we're going to deliver for what we want to see. Okay, so we've got another 2 minutes before we close the session. So we've got 2 more questions. We can answer both of those. So creating wood pasture with trees at 15 per hectare. Is there any way to show this? Yes, Stephen, this is something that we are going to release fairly soon. So we're doing at the moment a partnership with the Foundation for Common Land, where we've built a tool that you can pass any polygon through and say, produce a random number of dots following this pattern. So that could be saying, make, as you said, 15, please drop 15 trees per hectare in this point. And the algorithm goes and just drops points. And then also conversely, please create, based on this polygon, put 10 random points within that polygon. So it's either per hectareage or how many points total you want. I don't know when that's going to be out, but I know that's already, I can already run it. It's just the case of when we can get it into the front end once the development team have finished this sprint. I suppose in the meantime, Stephen, what you can do is draw a hectare square like I did earlier. So I think one of those, would I do a hectare square? Like this. The hectare is 100 by 100. Testing right. So there's a hectare, and then at least you can then draw 15 points within there and multiply it. So I would probably just then draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that, or something like that, and then you can copy and paste those points across the field. At least you've then done the right amount of points. But yeah, we're looking at these more fun tools as we move forward, especially in relation to the mobile app, because that would be really useful for soil sampling, etc. And the final question before we close the call is, do you need to buy the best guess baseline to use the biodiversity offset dashboard? The short answer is no, but it is highly recommended for the points I've just made. So you can buy the best guess baseline. You can buy the biodiversity offset, or biodiversity net gain, sorry, calculating dashboard. Doesn't require you to put in your best guess. However, it's strongly advised, because like I say, it's that authoritative data that makes the quality of your application all the better. Okay, and if you want, and Paul, if you want to, either yourself or anyone else here is interested in accessing the biodiversity net gain calculator, do drop us an email at sales@thelandapp.com, and I will put up my final slide and just say thank you very much all for coming. The session will be recorded. Please answer that survey on your way out, and thanks for joining. And if you've got any ideas for future webinars, there's a question in there as well. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.